Yeah.
And we're live.
We're live, man. Reminisce show, man. We here, man, live in the flesh every Tuesday, 7 p.m. And we have a very, very special guest, someone who I see as very important to Toronto, not just hip hop, but just Toronto. Someone who I've always looked up to over the years, and we'll get into some stories and stuff, man. But yeah, I'm just excited for this. I'm with my brothers, people that I respect highly, and ready to get this energy going, man, and just to get into some things.
Word up. I just reinforce and agree with everything that's been said. It's an honor and a pleasure to check in with the brother, artist, friend, mentor, good human being, just a good human being to know in the world. Whether you're lucky enough to know him personally or not, it's great, Kamau. Thank you for being here. And I got some questions here, but I wanted to start and have Logic ask the first question because he had something cool in mind that we were discussing before we talked to you. But yeah, we just gotta go back and forth, and we will reminisce like the show is. We would like to reflect on some old times in Toronto that we've all shared, some of your personal experiences, some of ours. But then I definitely have some questions that pertain to the present day and society and psychology and kind of existence, and then some future thoughts. So
yeah, true indeed, man. Well, for those that don't know, I went to a high school called Oakwood Collegiate, and Oakwood Collegiate, is anybody who knows, man, it's like a fraternity, man. It's like this community, it's identity. And when I came to Oakwood, I was coming from a school called named Lawrence Park. And Lawrence Park was just not culturally diverse. It was just the complete opposite of Oakwood, actually. And that's when I really started getting in tune with my heritage and identity. Started rapping and really exploring my voice in that capacity. And I just remember one day distinctively when we were just in the basement of Oakwood, because that's where everybody just kind of congregated after school. We would freestyle, the girls were braiding hair and doing dance routines, preparing for a talent show and stuff like that. And then one day, Kamau just shows up. He already graduated, but everybody knew him, and I just remember he just came through just looking all just cool and just had a strong presence, and we were just freestyling. And then he just came through and just did this freestyle, and I was just like, whoa. It was my first time when I was like, this guy is a real MC. This is what it looks like. This is the standard, and then from there, I've just kind of been just following Kamau around and just, taking in, what it is to be, an MC. And I remember being 17 and whatnot, and with my boy Kayla. Remember Kay? We used to K Wonder, man. Big shout out K Wonder. I remember, man, we used to sneak into some of Kamau's shows, and it's one I remember specifically was at the Rivoli, and we came in during sound check, and as you know, sound check is super early. It's 6 o'clock or 5 o'clock or whatever, and the show's not till 10. So we're chilling in the cut, hoping nobody notices that there's a bunch of kids hanging out. And I remember just being in this environment and just being this is the community, you know what I mean? And so I just wanted to just big up you for just some of my earlier influences of really being an example of an artist who's connected to community, connected to education, to music and all that good stuff. But I'm curious to know, for those that don't know, your original name or artist name was Crow, and Crow is a really interesting bird. It's mystical and so many meanings and definitions to it. But I'm curious to know where did that come from, and then why did you drop the name?
Bro, that's so long ago.
It's a Reminisce show, man. That's what we do.
I came up with that. I was probably 14 or something like that. I came up with that name. I figured crow is obviously a bird. Birds fly. They see things from high up. But also it was a black bird that was often looked at in terms of negativity or black magic, and it was just, at the end of the day, it was just a bird. That's how I thought about it. At the end of the day, it was just a bird, but it had all this stuff on it, the associations with evil and witchcraft and all kinds of stuff, largely negative. But at the end of the day, it was just a bird. So I looked at myself as that kind of way, like a person who was moving through the world, who wanted to at least seek something like wisdom or be able to see things in a certain way. But then also I was this Black person that I knew inside of myself that I was a good person. But of course, when you're like a young Black male growing up in Toronto, you're going to experience a lot of stuff. You know, I was around 13 or 14 where people would start following me through the corner store in Esplanade, or you know, it's probably around the first time I got stopped and questioned by police and all that kind of stuff. So that's where the crow thing came from.
Wow.
Okay. Well, that's the problem, man. Appreciate you sharing that, man. And now, you know, I want to get your perspective on like what Oakwood, you know, meant for you, just coming up as a young, you know, Black male trying to, you know, find your way through life. And what did Oakwood mean for you?
Oakwood is like maybe everything is like a bit of an exaggeration, but Oakwood meant a lot to me. I went to private school from senior kindergarten to grade 6. Then I went to Winona, and Winona was like a super hard transition as like, one, a Black person, but two, a person that had just come from private school.
Okay.
And so those years were a super difficult transition. And I feel like Oakwood is when I actually came into myself. It's where I met some of my best friends, Danilo, Paul Andre. It's where I did my first performance, you know. Mr. Kaleem was there, Jamil Kaleem was there, and he wasn't, when I think about it now, he was only like 10 years older than us.
Okay.
So I was probably 16. He was right out of Teachers College. So he was probably like 26, maybe 27. And he just spent a lot of time with us. And I used to be freestyling with like Paul and I mean, a whole bunch of other people, you know, by the games room in Oakwood or in the front steps or around back by the field or whatever. And he's like, oh, we're doing this Black History celebration. We're doing like a fusion of like African drum and dance, and then also like hip hop and reggae and that kind of thing. And I want you to come and like represent hip hop. And I was like, no, I'm not doing that, because I was super shy.
Okay.
I had my little group of friends, but I wasn't like super well known in the school or whatever. And I was like, yeah, no, I had never performed outside of just freestyling in circles with people. I had never performed. And he insisted. I said, get Paul to do it, get Danilo to do it, get this person to do it, get that person to do it. He's like, no, I want you to do it. And so finally I relented. He essentially forced me on stage, and it changed my whole experience at Oakwood. Like that, the Black History celebration at Oakwood was like, it was like the Apollo. It was like the Apollo for the neighborhood. It was one of the only Black history celebrations at the time in a high school. So kids would come from the other high schools to come to Oakwood's Black History celebration. So it was a big deal. I mean, Oakwood was big, but it was bigger than that. So I basically just like became known, at least to that little community at that time. And it changed my whole life. A couple years later, I was the president of the Black Students Association there, AfroCan. Yeah, man, it was just, Oakwood meant a lot to me. I feel like I became myself at Oakwood, or started becoming myself at Oakwood.
Yeah, no, I agree wholeheartedly with that. Like, I'm definitely in the same boat, you know, coming to Oakwood. I was like a shy kid, but like, I also knew like Lamin and Elliot, shout out to Lamin and Elliot, because we went to Jet, and I won like the poetry contest at the time, and I did my thing and, you know, got a standing ovation and encore. And then from there, it was just a wrap. I was like, I want to do this like this. I found myself, I found my voice, I found my community, my peoples. And, you know, Oakwood would always have that, like, you know, special place in my heart, as a lot of people do. Like, you know, anyone who has gone through those doors, like when we see each other, it's like, it's a reunion automatically, you know? Definitely.
I told you I had something for you. I got a lot of stuff for you, but this is one of them things. This is one of them things.
Oh, that's the wow. That's right? The one. That's the one.
Inside here, it has my name, the award present after this award presentation, just before the intermission, Kamau, Ian Prater McTear.
Yeah.
And where are you? Somewhere up here. So, Logical. Rap.
We have a title.
Yo.
You know, and it's crazy because I feel like is motion also on there? I know that Stacey Ann Buchanan is also on there as well. You know, there's a lot of people.
Jasmine Gibbons, the dancer.
Yeah, Jasmine.
Perret is on there.
Perret, yeah, man. So many people, man.
Yeah, I don't see motion.
I'm not sure if he's on that particular one though, but we definitely done some talent shows together and whatnot. So yeah, like Oakwood was the foundation, you know, and I think like everything I do with Stolen from Africa is definitely rooted in, you know, Afrocan, you know, Oakwood and everything really, you know. So I always hold that definitely close. But speaking of surprises, before my mentor gets into his questions, I actually have exclusive as well. I don't know if y'all can like see this, man. Like, you know about this book, man. Like, I was just actually taking in some of the photos. You know what I mean? That like you got like, you know, like DJ Son of Soul. You got like Tara Chase, man. Like you got Zaki when she's looking mad young. Like,
let's see a couple of them, yo.
Oh man, like this is just like.
This is a project that I did when I was in. I did a book design project when I was in my undergrad, probably like 23 years old or something like that. I never did anything with it. There's probably like, that's probably one of 2 or 3 copies because I had to get a copy of this thing.
Like, yo, shout out to the homie there.
Yeah.
God. How many pages is that? That looks like
it's a legit book.
It's a fair amount of pages. The course was basically just to design a book, like typography, graphic design, that kind of stuff. But I decided that I wanted to write a book. It was not a good idea, just in terms of workload. But basically, in 3 months, I like wrote a book and took all the photos. They're all on film. I have a bunch of them over there still. Like I've never really shown anybody any of those pictures. But it's probably Toronto 2003. I got pictures of Sean Hewitt. I got pictures of Chaos. I got pictures of, you know, the people that I was around. My friend Sada. Yeah, man. Zaki.
Yeah, like Chase is in here too. I saw like
Tara Chase, Chinadu Ukubam.
Crazy.
Yeah, man. A lot of people are in that joint.
It's a historical document, and I feel like a lot of like your music and just who you are, like kind of, you know, represents that. You know, when I'm listening to some old songs that I actually got, you know, another surprise, which we'll play in a bit, you know, it really captures like the essence of the times, you know, and, you know, like, I feel like that's just who you are, you know, like you're a real, like authentic, like artist in every fashion, way, form. And, you know, it reflects that. So whether you're doing a book, whether it's a video or a poem, like it's going to have that depth, that connection. So
I think it's like I was hearing Mustafa the poet speak recently about, you know, he says that he does folk music, and you know I think we have an idea of what folk music is like inside of our heads, but I was listening to something separate to that put it in another kind of a context. This, although it seems obvious just on its surface, like folk music just means that it's like folk.
Yeah, people, humans.
It's just people's music. You know what I mean? And so I think if you're, you know, if you're connected to people and you're embedded in a community of people, that as an artist especially, or any kind of a person that expresses, it'll naturally come out because that's your reality.
Word up.
True indeed, man.
So I mean, y'all have pulled out a couple goodies. I have some in the stash that I couldn't dig up, but I did find this. I don't know how well you can see. Yeah, and
that's the first thing. That's the first thing I ever like released, if you could even call it released.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I thought this was this. I mean, it doesn't say Old Soul on this, but I also pulled up Old Soul because I wanted to get into that possibly. But I thought this. I remember getting this, and I was very proud that like a fellow person, like especially as talented as yourself, is putting out independent projects. And I know we're going to get into it a bit later when we talk about One Day Soon, but as far as the connection between business and art, but I just wanted to ask you if you could talk to the Kamau that made this, what would you say to him as far as what he doesn't know about the business?
I mean, that I didn't know anything. I didn't at that time. At that time, I didn't know anything. I knew that I wanted to write. I knew that I wanted to make music. I knew that. I knew that I wanted to release music. I put out like a single. When I say single, it's like Kenny Neal, who also went to Oakwood, who's the person I started actually producing music with when we were teenagers. He made this beat for me, found a studio for us. We recorded it there and put out this song called Imagine. That was like 2000.
Crazy.
Probably 19 or 20 or something. I'm not sure if that tape Imagine tape was before that or just after that. I can't remember. I have one copy of those somewhere in my house too.
Yeah.
And anyway, so yeah, I was making a bunch of stuff. It's kind of like a bunch of fragments of stuff and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I recorded that, and it was like maybe just like a CDR version of it. And then you went to Long and McQuaid, and you could get one of those like just blank cassette tapes that were like 10 minutes on one side and 10 minutes on the other.
You did it. I was like,
just blank.
There's nothing. I was like,
You know, and so I literally dubbed every single one of those things myself in my house in between my CD and my tape player to be able to like start to get the word out, because I was around like freestyling or going to spoken word things or that kind of stuff. And so people knew me very locally, but there was nothing they could really hold on. Like Imagine may have played on some of the college radio stations, but there's nothing they could hold on to. So yeah, that person was just kind of fresh starting out, trying to understand like how to put music out in a world that at that time was super local.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well,
Peace.
Thank you for not. We've all gone through the ups and downs. All of us, I think, all three of us have put the mic in our hearts and then put it down, tried to work in the community, and then came back to doing both in various ways. And thank you for continuing on. But I also I wanted to drop a quick little track. I mean, I don't know if it's the kind of an extension of the same question, but I did want to. I don't know how many people know about your old stuff, so I mean, I love to reflect on this stuff. I don't know how much of a nostalgic cat you are, like if you're playing a bunch of 90s hip hop or 90s soul or rock, or if you're just like, I can't stand old music. But I did want to throw this on just for a second.
Oh yes.
Because it really spoke to a time in Toronto history.
Really soul slinging, secondhand campus when I torture was painted. I just play my soul, but make it untainted in the fall. Just to know it's self-love. Born into the earth, but sometimes convinced myself this was my first birth. And these my first words, given to the world, around transported through means of simple sound, and the cadence to communicate with people in their basements. Faces turned, loving the beat with no patience. To listen to the words said inside of these bars, set in the stars, these natural laws. We capture applause, trap them, then return them. Learning lessons as we hear the sermons, then unlearn them. So we can live them, give them back as experience. Many say any such action isn't serious. I was given this indigenous speech. Some loving to live life above, governing each man and woman. But I'm loving and living to teach and learn much. Cause you can only give what you receive. Oh, so, really I can't explain it. Secondhand canvas from the torture is pain.
I can't like this. I can't. It's difficult for me to listen to this stuff.
Really? Why is that? Why is that?
I don't know. I mean, it's like I hear myself as probably a 22-year-old and something like that, and it's just strange to hear what I was thinking and that sort of thing. You know, I still have that feeling of like nostalgia around it and that sort of thing. But I prefer. I mean, I had that sense that I have of like old music, especially that was from Toronto in and around that time. I think about like Socrates and Marvel and you know, Solitaire and Cardi and like that kind of stuff. That was like I have all that. I have a bunch of that vinyl still, you know, in my living room.
Uh-huh.
But it's hard. It's hard for me to. It's always been hard for me to listen to myself, if I'm going to be totally honest.
Okay. Okay. Well, that makes sense. And I mean, one of the other questions that I had off that is, you've always exuded a level of maturity and wisdom and peace and inner calm. I'm sorry, that's just the way I perceive it, whether you take it as a compliment or not. Like, I'm not trying to puff up your ego. Like, you just have that calm, mature outlook as a human being that I've always seen. And so when you put out a song like Old Soul, a lot of people were like, yes, hell yeah, of course he's an old soul. That's a perfect, that is Kamau. He's not fronting or making, like exaggerating himself for the sake of trying to get to a higher level or whatever, like some other rappers and artists have. But I kind of was wondering, like, you've always had this maturity, but what is something that keeps you young? What is something that keeps you youthful, or what is something that you do that you feel like connects you to the opposite of an old soul?
I mean, I like kids.
Okay.
I like kids. I think it's like my good friend Mia Sky has a daughter. Her name is Blue. I have a godson named Harlow. They're both 11, 12. And I think just when like being around kids have a certain kind of an energy that's like mischievous and kind of like inquisitive and that sort of thing. And I think because people have always had that view of me, I don't necessarily think I was any more mature than a lot of other people that were around me. I think sometimes it was like that I was like misinterpreted as being mature because I was quiet. That didn't necessarily mean that I was like much more mature or more mature at all than the people around me. And I think, maybe not drinking or not smoking or not really being a party person or whatever maybe influenced that as well. But I don't think in my actual development I was really much older. I wrote Old Soul as a song just because people used to tell me that all the time. Not necessarily because that's how I thought about it, but people used to say that to me all the time, like, you're an old soul. I'm like, okay. Sure, no problem. But if I was going to say like something, something that makes me feel that kind of youthful energy. I mean, it's part of the reason why I work with kids a lot when I was in the nonprofit sector. And it's why I enjoy spending time with like my niece or my godson or whatever, because, they're in that age and stage where they're still learning and they're interested. And if you're interested in what they're doing, they'll be excited about you being around too.
Yeah. No, that definitely speaks to your energy, man. I'm just recalled one time I was with my daughter in No Frills, and we seen you, and then she goes up to Kamau and she's like, "Yo, what's up, bro?" Like, just like, I've never seen her do that, but it just speaks to like.
And I didn't even know her before that. Not really.
Right.
I'd seen her around with you, but I never spoke to her before.
It's an energy thing.
We were friends, and she started like pulling me. Like we were going together all of a sudden. I'm like,
there's my second dad.
No, like for real though, but I think it just speaks to your energy, you know what I mean? And just the way how you're able to connect. And I know you mentioned about like working in like the, like the youth sector, nonprofit world, and I'm curious to know like your perspectives on that. I know there's a lot that could be covered, but I'm curious to know like what is your take on that world, kind of like, now that you've been out of it for a while, and versus like when you were in it, and versus where you are now.
I think it's good. At its core, I think it's good. I think it's complicated.
Yeah.
I think it's a lot of what occurs in the nonprofit sector is very what you would call downstream. It's the issues that people are trying to address. They will get, it's possible for those things to be improved in individuals' lives, but it very rarely gets to the systemic part of it, which means that more and more of those issues are going to be flowing downstream because we never really go upstream. That's kind of the reason why I wanted to get into something where I could understand systems better. Because for all the time, I was working at Scadencourt Community Center as my first job. Mia Sky got me that job when I was 15 or 16 years old. I did that for something like 10 years, painting murals. Some of those murals are still up in PO in Alexandra Park.
Wow.
And from there, I did more and more and more and more in the nonprofit sector until I was around 30, 30, 31. Let's say 30. And I just, for a long time, I felt like it just doesn't work. the way that it's spoken about, I actually don't think it works at all. But I do think it can help and support individuals. So I don't think it's bad per se, but I think I mean, my parents did very similar work. So
Right.
I remember like being a kid, being in conversations that literally 25 years later, I was hearing my generation of people having the same conversations, talking about the same problems that still existed inside of the city. And I had to be like, I think a lot of this actually doesn't work. And the money that flows to it largely gets held by administrators. And I'm not sure that it actually helps to develop the community in a real systemic, sustainable way. It's a bit of a Band-Aid, but that's not to say that it's not important. It's just, it is what it is, you know?
Right, right. Yeah, no, I hear that, like, you know, changing like systems and the structures, and it is very, very complicated. And, you know, I know a lot of us who've been doing it for a while, you know, definitely feel like the burnouts of it and just kind of going upstream, you know, trying to make waves. So yeah, I definitely hear you on that, man. Absolutely.
Wow. Well, I've got to, I mean, that sparked a question that I didn't have written down, but I kind of, screw it, man. I'm going to ask you, man. I'm going to jump around a bit where we don't have to be chronological and go from the past to the present. So speaking to that issue, as far as being not a Band-Aid, what do you, if you wouldn't mind sharing, unless if you want to share a level of the answer that you feel comfortable with. I was going to ask, what is the most revolutionary solution you think that Black people, oppressed people, poor people should go about doing? And if it's something that you don't feel comfortable on camera saying, what is maybe another, maybe not supremely revolutionary or controversial, but maybe more tangible and practical thing, unless they both intersect. But like a serious solution that is far beyond the Band-Aids that you see.
Yeah, so there are two things in that question I don't believe in. One, I think if people, not me, because I don't really talk about revolution.
Oh.
I do think if people are interested in revolution, they need to approach what revolution actually is, like what it actually is. And I think most of the time when people say revolution, what they're talking about is the nonprofit sector, or they're talking about a certain kind of a incremental change. I mean, revolution is serious. Revolution is like serious, often extremely violent, and what it does is it flips the status quo. So all the things you benefit from in terms of the status quo, at least for whatever amount of time, you got to let all that stuff go. It's not just uncomfortable, it's painful, and really the majority of the time it's super violent. And I don't think that people are actually prepared for that. But I mean, study history about revolutions, and you'll see that's what it is over and over again. So right. being a person who's like in the spoken word scene or in the hip hop scene, like talking about revolution was not something that I ever really did. You know what I mean? I also don't believe in solutions. You know, I do believe in approaches, better approaches. But I think solutions are hard to come by in a world that is constantly changing. You know, like once there is something that works better than something else, it can always work better. Right. And sometimes something that worked at one point in time works worse years down the line because life has changed, people have changed, society has changed, culture has changed, politics have changed, economies have changed, power has shifted, all that kind of stuff. So I think as people that are interested in progress, that is something that I believe in. People that are interested in progress, we have to constantly be adapting our approaches to what is better towards the actualization of people. But that is going to shift all the time. And I think I would be wary of anybody who says that they have a solution. There's a bunch of people in history that have said they had a solution, final or otherwise, and that never went well. guaranteed. So I don't believe in solutions. I think it's a process, you know.
Thank you. That's perfect. Yeah,
That's
very clear. Thank you. I'll follow that up with not playing some music, but it was.
I don't mean you can't. I'm just like, you know.
I mean, there is. I mean, it actually.
I got some music, but we say that for later, though.
Yeah, but this kind of has a parallel to both the artistry and the society. But I mean, one of your other powerful songs is Black Bodies, and I was going to ask basically about the process of when you released One Day Soon. We definitely have to talk about One Day Soon. If anybody's watching and don't know, that's Kamau's official full solo album, 2011.
Yeah.
So yes, so you put out One Day Soon.
Classic, by the way.
A magnificent, wonderful piece of work, which actually kind of speaks to, the having hope, but also working towards and through a process of struggle. I did want to ask about something that I didn't know when you sent me some of the information about you doing interviews after, because you said that you had gone through a major depression after you released that.
Yeah.
And I kind of was wondering, like, do you feel like being a Black Canadian or an independent artist without major financial backing, or like, us here in Toronto, like we're not affiliated with OVO or The Weeknd or whatever, like, do you feel like depression or sadness or disappointment is like a guarantee, or I mean, I wanted you to talk about that because I know you have insights in that, but I also want you to talk about your depression a bit because I didn't even know that it was that bad.
I hope it's not a guarantee. I think there's also a lot of mistakes that I made in and around that time. And I think at least part of depression also is a mindset. I say that carefully because I don't want to discount either what I went through or what anyone else goes through.
Right.
And I also don't want to individualize it like it's just like pull up your bootstraps and like get over it kind of thing.
Amen. No, nobody's saying that for real.
Yeah. But I'm trying to think how much. I was involved in the founding of an organization called NIA Center for the Arts.
Okay.
And I was let go from that organization in October of 2010. I put all of my energy into the album I was already working on and had got funded for from some of the arts councils. I put all of my energy into that record. A bunch of it was recorded at that stage in the game. I was still at NIA when I put out Love and Other Struggles, which was like a mixtape that I did the year prior.
Right.
And anyway, so I put literally all of my energy into doing that record and everything around it, the listening party, the launch party, the release itself, all of that kind of stuff. And very soon after it came out, my phone didn't ring. I was trying to get shows. I produced the whole album myself, and I owned all the IP, all the intellectual property in relation to it. So behind the scenes, I was trying to talk to publishing companies and people who were into publishing to try to get those songs or the instrumentals from them placed in film or television or whatever. And it just wasn't working. It wasn't working.
Yeah.
And I was only able to do about 7 shows for all the time and all the people that I knew in Toronto. I was only able to do about 7 shows. The reality is 2 of them I organized myself. One of them, I was still in touch with Saul Guy, who was Kanon's manager, and Kanon was doing super well. So I kind of like bothered Saul to open for Kanon at Massey Hall. I did 3 Dwayne Morgan shows in that chunk of shows, and then I opened for Roy Ayers. And that was pretty much all that I was able to do. What you're supposed to do after a record come out is to be able to tour, especially if you have a physical record, which isn't really a thing that I think people have as much these days, unless it's like special edition. you're going to sell more physical CDs at shows than you are going to sell them basically in any other way. I didn't put any CDs in stores or anything like that. And I think that was kind of the end of the CD thing anyway.
Right.
Close.
And so I just expected that I was able to do more. I didn't have employment. I put all my energy into that, into being an artist, etc. And literally in within a month after the record coming out, it was just quiet. And I was home by myself every day, essentially for that entire winter. And I sank and I sank and I sank. It got pretty bad.
Wow.
It got pretty bad. And, you know, Toronto winters, if you're not reaching out to people, it's just, you could just be on your own.
Yeah.
And I was already a person that people knew, like, he didn't really like to go to parties, and he's not like, you know, a person who's out all the time and whatever. And so I think that the momentum for me kind of being alone or as a loner all the time was cemented in people's heads anyway. And so not a lot of people really even reached out to me to even know. And I don't think I understood, like, the way that I can articulate now that I had something called depression. I couldn't have articulated. I knew how I felt, but I'm not sure that I could have articulated it at the time. And it's part of the reason why I got very interested in depression and anxiety, specifically in the Black community, actualization as the larger thing to actually shoot towards, and mental health more generally, because of my own experience. At that time, I was trying to get to South Africa. That also wasn't working. And towards our spring, I say our spring because I ended up being able to go to South Africa. Towards our spring, I got a message from a woman in Rwanda who was helping to organize a conference in Cape Town. And she asked me, would you come to Cape Town to come to this conference? So I asked all the questions that you normally ask, like, do you mean just come, or do you mean you're going to pay for the ticket and my accommodations? And
right.
you know, like, what do you mean just come?
Yeah.
And so she's like, yeah, everything is going to be paid for it. I looked and I found that you could work as a Canadian in South Africa. Like, you could work to get paid as a Canadian in South Africa without a visa for up to 3 months. And so I asked her whether it mattered, whether I just stayed for the 5 days of the conference or whether I could stay for whatever amount of time. And she was like, I mean, it doesn't matter to us. And so I said, if you could book my ticket for 3 months, book my ticket for 3 months. And I contacted a bunch of people that I know in South Africa and asked them to book me some shows, only paid shows, but I would give you 15% if you help me book the show. And I ended up doing something like 32 shows in that couple of months. I stayed about 5 months there. I went to 15 cities. I got paid at least 3 times more than I was getting paid in Toronto for any of the stuff that I did. Wow. There, or in Rwanda, or in Ethiopia. I went back the next year. I went to Zimbabwe. I went to Ethiopia again. I went to Kenya. I went to all over the place.
Wow.
And so it kind of like helped me lift myself out of that, because I was doing the thing that I wanted to do, but I never forgot that experience of depression and started to kind of ask questions in my family about it and explore it myself, and probably realized that I had been suffering with some level of depression for a long time, but just didn't necessarily understand what I was experiencing. And I think a lot of Black people in general, and a lot of Black men specifically, will say things like, I'm tired or I'm stressed, and what's actually happening is you're depressed, my guy. You know?
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
That's that time. That time really changed the entire direction of my life, you know?
Wow. And was it when you came back from Africa that you felt like you could say to yourself that you had somewhat healed or worked through it, or no?
No, it's a process. I look at managing depression like exercise. You know, you could go and spend 3 months in the gym, and then you could stop and you lose all your gains.
Right.
It's constant. And I think some people have like a situational depression, like something happens and then they respond to it. And I think some people are actually managing depression and anxiety all the time as a baseline. And they have to, just like you have to maintain your health, just like you can't eat one meal and not have to eat again for another 3 months. That's not how it works. It's something that you have to maintain constantly. So both in your head and in your body, and the combination between those two things. So
integrated in your lifestyle pretty much.
Yeah. So I don't know like, to your question, I don't know if it's something that I think it is possible for people to like heal it, but I also think that's part of that individualistic kind of way of looking at it. I think, we live, our society and our culture encourages depression and anxiety. Those people who wake up and they're like, rise and grind, like, like you're like going all the time. You have to produce, you have to produce all the time. And it's just not really natural for human beings to do that. And because we seems like we're mostly valued for the things that we produce, when we're not producing, we feel bad about ourselves. Or when we don't get that acceptance psychologically, we feel bad about ourselves. Or maybe we have family stuff, which we all have, but to some extent, people have different kinds of family things. Like they say, the way that your main mentors, parents, guardians, whoever your mentors were, basically spoke to you when you were a kid, that becomes your inner voice. So if those if those messages weren't good, you may be struggling with those messages all the time. Like they'll start to be implanted inside of your head. And then you got to work on actually being able to first even acknowledge them. Like that, the way that you think, it's different than hurting your arm, right? If there's something that's going on in your head, it's informing everything. If I hurt my arm, I can look at my arm and say I hurt my arm. If my perception is skewed, it's very difficult to understand that my perception is skewed, because that's how I navigate reality, Wow. So yeah, I don't profess to know how to heal anything necessarily. I do think healing is an important process, but I think people usually talk about it like there's a beginning and there's an end that's healing. I think it's like everything in life, I think it's a constant process.
Yeah. So like, speaking of like process, like what is your process in kind of like managing, depression or any kind of like, things of that nature?
Routine. Routine and acknowledgement, so like I have a pretty particular routine when I get up in the morning. Okay. Like I've been in my house for days, but I'll get up in the morning and I'll put on full clothes like I'm going outside. I never stay in the clothes that I sleep in into the day. I get up every day, I make my bed, I brush my teeth, I wash my face.
Right.
I take a shower, I eat my breakfast, I drink a glass of water, I take some supplements. Sometimes I'll meditate or do mindfulness stuff. I haven't been doing that a lot recently. I start my day, I separate all the spaces in my house. I don't take my computer into my bedroom. I don't sleep this is my office. I don't sleep in my office. I make music in my studio. Right. I don't do work in my living room. I do work in my office, because your brain starts to associate it just becomes a mess, And so I do those things. Yeah. I try to reduce people in my life that are stressful or toxic as much as I can. And spend time with people that nourish me in a certain way. Not nourish me like gas you up, challenge you too, but people that are fundamentally good for you and where you're trying to get to. Before the pandemic, I was going to the gym 3 times a week. I was running. Logic knows that. I was running. A lot of that has stopped, but that's part of some of the things that I do to like maintain my mental health and also to check how I think, Yeah,
thank you for sharing that. Those are real, like, clear, tangible examples. Some of those I'm going to take note of, especially, section off in like your spaces, because I integrate everything, and I realize sometimes things just become so cluttered, and I'm like, what is going on here? But I think what you have, like, I think you're onto something right there. I think it's really powerful.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. I have this next question that leads in and supports that, but you kind of answered it, but there's also other things to talk about, because the question essentially is, you spoke about essentials and the futility of art in emergencies, essentially, when you were talking about when they did that survey, and that group of people had said that artists were the least essential people. And what I had actually, the other part of the question was, what practical items have sustained you and what abstract things have sustained you? But like you basically answered it right there. I did want you to talk more about that. Like, since you've come out, has anybody spoken to you about having a new insight on, hey, thank you, Kamau, you actually made me realize that if I was taking art for granted, you helped me kind of ground myself and appreciate that? Or do you feel like we still struggle with that in this very, as you were saying, incredibly capitalistic society, when people are like, oh, if I'm not making online content, or if I'm not producing this and hustling and stacking paper all the time, I am not essential or valuable? Like, how do you feel? Do you feel there's any shift or change in, since you put that out, or just in general?
I don't know that there's been any shift since I put it out. The majority of messages that I've got have been from other artists or people that work in the arts. And so, I mean, predominantly I wrote that because those are the things that I struggle with regularly. Right. I was struggling with that sense of whether or not it's valuable enough to make sacrifices for it. And I feel like I've made a lot of sacrifices for my art, but I also think that I imagine that if I feel that way as an artist, that a lot of other artists and people in general may feel that way about either art or the thing that they feel is their passion and their purpose. If it hasn't necessarily done what they think that it was supposed to do, whatever their projection about what it was supposed to do was, or whatever their goal is in relation to it. But I think it's similar to the question about approaches. It's like we have to find different approaches to navigate what it is that we want to do. And I think, as I said before, I think that there were a lot of mistakes that I made before that I think I can learn from. In terms of people that may have changed their mind, it wasn't really my goal to change anybody's mind. It was really just to ask questions and to make people think about it, whatever they thought, and to have that come from a place that was honest to me, at least, because I imagine if I felt that way, then a lot of other people are feeling that way too.
How's your tooth doing, man? I had a fucked up tooth. I gotta ask you, man. That really
my dentist has been telling me for years that I have to take my wisdom teeth out.
Okay.
That's literally what that's about. He's a super nice guy, but I can't afford it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I mean, I've had dental pain that I had to go deal with during the pandemic when things were locked down, and I mean, I feel valuable even though I'm very much not a traditional person in this society, and I'm like, damn, I can't access dental help in this, and yeah, so I just really wanted to say I related to that part, and I just wanted to see, are you all right? Because dental pain can be serious.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm okay. I'm all right. I have to do something about it. I just don't know when I'm going to be able to,
Damn.
Man.
A lot of magic. I'm not. You got a question or a jewel to drop? And as all the people listening, all our guests, thank you very much. I hope you're appreciating the conversation. Throw in some questions if you have some for Kamau or any thoughts.
Legend, man.
Colleen, Eric.
Yeah, so I definitely have some exclusive that, I mean, I have a song. I'm not going to play the full entire song. I'm just going to play Kamau's verse. This was a song, one of the only songs that I actually had the privilege and honor of doing with Kamau. It was a song called Paradise with Unknown Misery. And we did this. This was recorded for an album that never came out. So I have the whole, I got the whole album, in the stash. I can send it to you, Kamau, later if you want to check that out. But this song was, really, really powerful. We recorded this, I want to say maybe like 2006, 2007-ish. So, it's been quite a while, but I was actually just taking it in earlier today and just hearing the lyrics and how relevant and how, it connects to today. And I just remember like when we finally got you in the studio to record this, this was a studio that we're working out of over on St. Clair and Dufferin area, and you just came through and did your thing. And after you left, me and Misery, we were like, we made it. We felt like we made it as artists. We really felt like we've arrived, like we got a track with Kamau, man. So I'm gonna play this verse, man. It's off of our unreleased album that I don't even know if it's going to see the date of light because there's a lot of politics around it and blah 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 and a lot of hands, but whatever, it's all good, man. In the theme of Reminisce, we're going to play this. So let me see if I get some volume. Play this here. Here we go. I gotta love your life, love your life. Tell me true when we looking for paradise. You know you gotta love your life.
Paradise calling, cast out of the garden. Spirit cries out when our hearts do harden. Harder than the concrete, we live within the walls. Within right angles, we train to hear the call. It seems in the day-to-day they always choose to mention the pot of gold, but the road is paved with good intention. With the wealth of the world to the peasant, they think that paradise is the pleasure of the present. They wish to rule above all, not thinking they are equal. But paradise, in fact, is the freedom of the people. And if this life is destiny, destined to be a test, then what of the oppressor, blessed of the oppressed? Suffering explodes from the seeds of our desire, blooming from the branches of trees made of fire. But if our spirit shelters, our nature should intervene. As if the trees are burning, I'd rather swim in the stream. We live within a dream, the nightmare of destruction. Find freedom controlling the means of consumption. Meaning I work for and don't beg for what I have. Choosing for myself if I choose to walk a path. Pursuing the ruling class, seeking the hand that stained with the blood of those who wish to see paradise again. Because we know it's calling, convinced that we will have it. And if life is a test, then I pray that we will pass it.
Still fire. Still.
I think I have that somewhere. I don't know where, but I think I have that somewhere.
You have it without the those vocals are from an artist named Aya. I know she goes by another name now. She performed with what she go by now?
Myrna, right?
Myrna, yes.
Oh.
She performed with Narcy the other day at the Aga Khan Center a while back. Yeah, because the version that you had didn't have her vocals on that yet. So
I didn't even know she was on that. I talked to her the other day.
That's crazy, man. Like, she knows what's on, man. Big her up, man. Big her up. Yeah, super exclusive. One of my favorite songs that I've ever recorded. And yeah, that's off a unreleased album called Plantation Music, man. It's like 17 joints, including the song called Stolen from Africa that we used to perform a lot back in the day. But I mean, that's exclusives, man. That's the Reminisce show vaults. You know what I mean? And we got a whole lot of that, yo. But yeah, man, big tune. Lyrics powerful, man. Still resonates to this day. And like I was telling my man, I'm like, yo, this song sounds like it was like recorded right now, man. Lyrics still relevant. And that's you as an artist that I've always seen you to be. I can listen to your music 30 years from now, and it'll still speak to the times. So salute.
If we could just. I have a couple more questions. We're not going to go forever, but thank you very much for this. This has been wonderful. We didn't really plan this, but I just wanted to know, you're talking about, we were talking about Mia Sky and you're talking about Aya there and from Shy Wisdom and just Tara Chase. And a lot of people were saying 2020 and 2019, it's finally the year of women MCs really taking over in hip hop. I mean, Deja, she's been doing great, and or I think they don't know their pronouns, but I just wanted to know what you thought when you, heard WAP or what? It might be a very cliche question, but we do try to make space for women and women's issues on the show, and I just want to know, is there a woman MC that you're listening to these days, Kamau, or how do you feel about? I don't know, friggin' Tory Lanez shooting Megan and stuff like that. Or
you gotta slow down, my guy.
I'm just kind of wondering, the idea of women in modern hip hop. How are you? Is there any women that lately you've been checking out, or how do you feel?
In general, I have to say that I don't listen to a lot of hip hop in general these days. If we're talking about women in music, I mean, I'm a big fan of Jasmine Sullivan as much as I am a big fan of Shy Wisdom or Adria Kane from Toronto. I mean, I was always a big fan of Lauryn Hill. I'm a little offended sometimes when people are like, they talk about their top 5 or whatever, and they don't put Lauryn Hill up there. Because most of the other people they could put in top 5 and certainly top 10 are somewhere below Lauryn Hill. You know what I mean? I think women have always had a difficult time in hip hop because hip hop specifically is so hyper masculine.
Yeah.
If I, as a man, had difficulty in hip hop with it being so hyper masculine or just navigating spaces that were very hyper masculine spaces, then of course women had all kinds of issues trying to navigate those spaces. Because they were not just hyper masculine, but in some places and times, like actually quite violent. I'm not saying that's specific to hip hop, but that's specific to a lot of spaces that are occupied by men, especially young men. Not even especially young men. I don't know why I said young men.
Yeah.
Just men, just typical dudes. So yeah. But I think there are a bunch of other things that come with being a woman in hip hop and in music that I certainly couldn't talk about. But on some level, I'm aware of the issue of it because I've seen it. I've seen it happen. I've seen it happen with female friends of mine. And half the time, we as men only see some fraction of what they're actually going through. So. But yeah, if I had a ton of money, I would put a bunch more money behind Jasmine Sullivan, certainly.
Word.
I'd love to see like a Bjork, Tom York record.
Word. Yeah, man. So I'm just like this one I want.
I have one question about your schooling, if we could go there.
Yeah.
I'm sure you know about this, but I'm just gonna say it anyways. Akon is building a city in Senegal, and with African architects and futuristic infrastructure. He's got the website up, and he's got some really cool looking stuff. And I just wanted to know how you feel. I don't know exactly the depth of your actual like schooling post-secondary as a city planner, but I just thought like, do you have aspirations or dreams to kind of be on that level of city planning and then like infrastructure building as far as the actual resources of building literal buildings itself? Like, is that one of your goals, or where do you city plan when those ideas come to you?
Yeah, I don't have a planning designation. I did a master's in environmental studies, and I wasn't expecting to be so interested in planning until I was already there. And so my intention was never to get a planning designation, but I did take a lot of planning courses just because it interested me. And obviously I grew up in a city, and I spent a lot of time working in the nonprofit sector. And so those ways that cities are created, the DNA that's inside of cities affects us whether we know it or not. So I'd definitely be interested in participating in processes that were like that, like shaping environments with people that we could participate in. My neighborhood Esplanade is the result of that kind of progressive work, at least for a time, with David Crombie and Jane Jacobs and the planners that planned my neighborhood. So I would be interested in kind of navigating that space or like participating in a space like that. But I wouldn't consider myself to be a planner. Like I am interested in planning, but I'm more interested in like city building from a human perspective, you know?
Okay. Cool.
Peace, so.
Hopefully you have both in your future because whether it's a community aspect or actual architecture, it seems like the structure of your music and the things that you touch are healthy for people. I've seen no evidence otherwise. So
true indeed.
Yeah.
Are we gonna share like some? I have stuff like.
All right. Yeah, we
I have stuff like all around me right now.
All right, we're done bombing you. hit us with you. Make us reminisce. What you got?
What do I got? You want to see like a lot, or you want to see a couple things?
We want to see exclusives, man. Like,
see, I don't know what's exclusive. I don't know what's exclusive. I got this. What's this? October 11th, 2020. You recognize this guy?
Yeah. Oh, that guy. I heard of him.
Serious, man.
Order.
Jeez, chaos. Yes.
Wow. All right.
I mean, a lot of people won't really know what this is, but
come on.
Optical oddities. Yeah.
Pangea Project.
Yes.
Oh,
Sean Booth, Pangea Project.
Oh my God, those are good.
What are these up to these days, man? Like, where's everybody at, yo? Like, man.
I mean, Jay's around here. Book is in LA.
Book is in LA, really?
Yeah, Book's in LA. Is doing. I mean, Book's doing well.
There's no doubt that Book will be doing well.
Look, here's one from my boy Mindbender.
Oh, word. Oh, you have that.
This is the first one, August 3rd.
This was really, yes. Oh, yeah, that's when you did that. Yeah, you did that. Oh, my God, yeah.
It's like in mint condition, too.
Hey, man, I take care of my stuff, man.
Yes, shout out Zaki, man. Zaki.
This is one we did at the Mod Club. So I'm on that one, too.
Yeah, man, RIP to the Mod Club, yo.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Mod Club's gone. This was supposed to have this. I think this happened at Reverb. Yeah.
Yo.
This is supposed to have Chaos on it, but he backed out last minute. I had to get Butter Babies from Montreal to come fill the space.
Oh snap!
Drex and Audie, remember Drex and Audie?
The Butter Babies. Wow.
Shout out Ziplocs, yo.
Ziplocs, Man-Child, Butter Babies.
Oh man, yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Is that the flyer that has Bahamadia on it? Is that the one?
This has Rocksteady Crew, Elda Sensei, DJ Craze. No, not Bahamadia.
Okay.
Mountain.
That was like one of like the first like hip hop shows that like I've been to, man. Like,
and a lot of people didn't recognize me on the flyer.
What?
Oh, that's you?
Yeah.
No facial hair.
Yeah, this is way before facial hair. This was like a freestyle session at behind the bamboo for 416 Graffiti Expo. Someone was taking pictures.
Yes.
You know, Hieroglyphics was there that day.
That's right. And Living Legends. That's right.
And Living Legends, exactly.
Yeah, that's right.
This is some crazy old school. I don't know when the year is. You see that? Comfort zone.
Comfort zone, yes.
Oh man, Awkward Y.
Awkward Y and Dynasty.
Dynasty, okay.
Yo, man.
What year is that though? Does it say the year? That's
no. See, I have a problem. I have a bone to pick with like promoters that were doing flyers, and even when people do it now in the internet age, you know what I mean? Like, put your year on your flyers. Think about history. Put your year on your flyers.
Yes,
that's true.
You know,
it's true. Man, Toronto really needs an Elemental documentary.
So I always used to do that.
Yes.
Right? December 4th, 2003.
Right.
This was for that first EP that I put out.
Yes, I remember that one. Yeah.
We did 3 shows or something like that.
Got Mathematic on there, like like Rain, King Rain, man. Rest in peace, King Rain.
Rest in peace.
Rest in peace, Rain. Yes.
Here's a ticket. This is Chaos with John Legend at Molson Amphitheater.
That's yes, John Legend opening for Chaos. Well, I think it was like Chaos's peak in Toronto. That felt like that was his
July 15th, 2005.
Wow.
Let me see. I got posters. I got magazines. I got all kinds of stuff.
Man.
You remember this?
This guy, Dojo magazine. Oh man, Carl's on there. Major.
Carl's on there. That's Carl.
Yeah.
Shout out to
That's
Carl, man.
me. That's
Yo.
me. Fatsky. Well,
That's me.
Juan's there. Danilo's there. Just did the Toronto sign.
Wow.
Yo, that is a classic cover.
man.
Wow. Oh, that's a moment.
Jeez.
That's Juan right there. That's Danilo up there.
Oh my god.
Oh my gosh. Wow, man.
Oh.
Reminisce.
Yo,
I
man.
got some, bro. I just pulled like a couple stuff up like 5 minutes before.
Yes, I got
The release party at the Reverb, yo. That was crazy.
Oh,
Yes, I remember that issue. Yes.
Oh wow.
Johara over there.
Yes. Shout out Rodrigo, man. Saul guy.
Gee, Saul. Wow.
I remember that issue, man.
Wow.
Yeah, man.
Those are the biggest magazines back in the day, man. It's like you got a feature in there, you're official, yo.
Yep.
Yes.
Sick. Classic. Oh man, good condition, man. Wow.
I have 3 of these.
Wow, man.
Word.
Like it would take me hours to go through all the files that I have. I have magazines. I have a whole file full of stuff. I got.
Historian too. That's great.
I was gonna say that, man.
Look. Wait. I mean, I have too many posters to show you, but
Posters, like, look at this.
I post that. Is that a Choclair poster?
yeah.
Wow.
Oh my god.
Original. Come on, man.
Wow. Oh my goodness.
It's like with Julie
That's
Black,
solid
man.
stuff.
Original, man. Holy.
Wow. Awesome.
Oh man.
Now that is worth. Oh my god, that's like worth value in the city. To oh my god, I don't know if I've ever seen that. A 4 and 6 poster.
Right.
I was always a collector, you know.
Wow.
Man. Makes me wish I kept some of those posters and flyers and stuff.
I could just keep going and going.
I kept a bunch, but I didn't keep them all in good condition. Oh my god, look at that exit. Oh
Yes.
wow. Wow. Is that Rascals? What?
Yeah.
I remember like I bought that Exit album just because you had that exclusive feature that like
Yeah.
like I don't even think you even got like credit on it officially. It was just like
Not on the first one. Not on the first one.
not in the first right.
Not on the first one.
Yeah. Oh man.
Oh, the Dusty Foot Philosopher. Man.
Anyway,
Yes.
Whew.
I got like some of the exclusive, like the promos.
Is that oh yes.
Jeez.
Bro, I have so much stuff. I won't bore you with all of it, but
No. It's just
I got so much stuff.
This is peace, man. But like speaking of like Chaos, like how did you like get connected with him? You know, because like I remember back in the day I would always see him around, you know, because I lived in like Navon and Oakwood area and like over on Kenwood. I always see him in his Land Rover and whatnot. And then I'll always just see him around in the hood, you know. But like how did you connect with him?
So I mean, it was probably, I'm not sure if it was 2001 or 2002. I was around, just like I would go to every freestyle session that I could go to, every spoken word show, every freestyle session, whatever. I was out multiple times a week, going to all these things, just trying to get on a microphone, wherever I could. And a friend of mine who went to, when we were in high school, she went to Harvard, and there was a group that brought together the different Black associations in the high schools. So Oakwood, Harvard, Tech, I think. And we would have these meetings like once or twice a year of like the different Black associations or like student groups, Black students groups in the high schools. So I knew, I won't say her name, but I knew this girl who would eventually become his girlfriend much later. And she came up to me when we were older and was like, oh, he wants to meet you. And I was like, okay. We were at the Barrington Levy Rascals Chaos concert at the Reverb. And she came up to me like, oh, he wants to meet you. I was like, all right. And so I go over there. He's like, hey, good to meet you. I'm like, all right, cool, no problem. And I ran into him a couple other times, just like, you know, what's up, how you doing? I didn't really know him. It was just like, hey, good to meet you kind of thing.
Right.
I knew of him from before, from the music he released before, but this is before Exit came out.
Right.
And so that was like, you know, Musical Essence or Rise Like the Sun. Like everybody, Much Music times, everybody would see those videos that got onto Much Music. They would see that stuff, Extended Mix, Master T, all that kind of stuff. Anyway, so I was around freestyling and whatever, and then I started doing shows, and I was on Queen Street West once with Danilo. We were doing this thing called the Q Continuum. I saw the flyer earlier, but I didn't take it out. This thing called the Q Continuum with I can't remember the name of the group now, but they asked us to do a show. And I ran into Kevin and Saul on Queen Street around like the Much Music building. What was that? There used to be a hip hop store across the street at Lounge. I ran into them in front of Lounge, and I told them, I'm just heading to a sound check right now. I'm going to do a show tonight. If you guys want to come, I'll put you on the list. And so I put them on the list, and I wasn't expecting them to come to the show, but they came to the show. And then after, my same friend with him came up to me and said, oh, he wants to speak to you. He's over there. And we went to like a booth. It was like some mafia stuff. He was like sitting in a booth in like the front of the Rivoli after the show. And she came and said, oh, he wants to speak to you. And he was like sitting underneath like a lamp or whatever, just alone in a booth. And so I went over there and he said, you know, I know I've been telling you I want to help you or that kind of thing, but this is what it means. Like, I got a deal. I'm working on an album right now, or it's soon to be coming out. It was a 2-album deal, I think. And part of it, there was a, what do you call it? The artist, he had like an artist development part of his budget. And he built a studio that was up by Dufferin and Davenport area, Geary Street. And he was going on tour to start like the promotion, like the industry's beginning promotion for Exit before they had started to release the records. And he basically just said, yo, if you want to use the studio or whatever, just let me know. So I said, sure. I'd love to. I had no real access. I mean, I would go and record with Bookworm every now and again, but I had no real access to a studio. Right. And so he said, yo, come by the studio. I said, could some friends of mine come? I brought Kenny. Because Kenny understood sound way more than I understood sound. And so I went there, he showed me all of the stuff and that kind of thing. And I asked him later if I could bring some other people, and that ended up being the guys from Pangea. So we recorded the whole of Pangea in that studio, and I recorded the whole first record in that, the first EP in that studio as well. He came back off a tour. York had gone on strike. I was still in my undergrad at York. York had gone on strike, and he came back off tour, and he said, he came to my house actually, and he was like, so what did you do? I said, I recorded like 15 songs. And he was like, what? He's like, yeah, I recorded like 15 songs. He's like, okay, can I hear them? He's like, all right. So I played him a bunch of the songs, and he was like, if you want to, what do you want to do? I'm like, I don't know. I had the opportunity to record songs. York went on strike. I just went to the studio every single day. And he was just like, if you want to release the songs, I'll help you release them. So I was like, all right, cool. And he ended up, that same song, Old Soul, he ended up investing in releasing Old Soul, the single, with the vinyl, like 500 pieces of vinyl or something. And then also the whole EP, which came out of that time of me just like going to the studio every day during the York strike when I had access to a studio. So that's how I met him.
Word. Crazy story, man. Oh, wow.
Yeah, and then, he took me all over the country. He took me across Canada at least twice. We went to the UK. We did shows with The Roots and Cody Chestnut and
Jeez.
Roy Hardgrove and all kinds. I met all these guys in Amsterdam and in London and in Manchester and all these places. It was a crazy experience for like a 22, 23-year-old, you know.
Amazing.
I always have to credit him. I always have to credit him for that, because I'm not really sure if I would have continued even back then if I didn't get that kind of like practical encouragement. Like, I'll release more songs. You know?
Wow.
Well,
like he believed in you, man. He saw something in you, was like, I'm gonna back this, you know, and in a real like in a real way. That's peace. That's peace.
And we had the Trini connection too, so that didn't.
That helps. That helps. Alliance, you know. Yeah.
Yo, so I mean, there's a couple big questions here, but I'm not gonna keep you forever, and we're not gonna do it. But there's at least two little tiny ones that might expand, but they would be very insightful, and I would love to have your thoughts on them. As I was doing a research, I saw that you talked about your breakfast and your routines, and that was really cool. But the thing that caught my eye was you said that you listen to podcasts. That's cool, but I just didn't really expect that you would be into Jordan Peterson.
Yeah. Man. Okay.
I would just obviously, I love you, bro. There's never been any judgment, but I just want to know like what you take from, or how you interact with a thinker or whatever. Like, what do you take from Jordan Peterson?
Yeah. So okay, Jordan Peterson. I started watching Jordan Peterson before he did the thing at U of T and before he got like famous. Okay. He used to record all of his lectures on like Western psychology on the internet. And so what's his name? I can't remember his name now, but the guy who does a bunch of the artwork for Shad had posted something on his Justin Broadbent had posted something on his Facebook about the necessity of virtue, which is like an old Jordan Peterson lecture from all the way back then. And I watched it and I just thought it was really good. And so I got into, because all his lectures were online and I was interested in psychology, as I said before, I got into just listening to him talk about psychology, like teaching a course on psychology. And I thought, I guess the way that he spoke about psychology in relation to popular culture and art was super interesting to me as a beginning into psychology. As I said, that was before he did the whole thing about basically misgendering people at U of T. Yeah. So I do still appreciate the work that he does, but I usually give a kind of caveat when I say that. The caveat is basically people sometimes, especially professors, people that are highly knowledgeable about a subject, sometimes those people, we look to them to be generally intelligent, like to just be intelligent about everything because they've studied one narrow thing. And the reality is Jordan Peterson is very well versed in the Western psychological tradition. That's what he knows about. That's what he's invested all this time and energy in. He has done no work on race. He has done no work on gender. So that people ask him questions about race and gender, I think is a mistake, because it would be like asking
Michael Jordan about baseball.
Michael Jordan about, exactly. That's not his expertise. And not only is it not his expertise, but he actually has very little, if any, understanding of those topics. And so he speaks about those topics and things like them. Anything that is separate from the Western tradition in general, the Western psychological tradition in general, the Western Christian tradition in general, Western colonial understandings of the world, etc., Western education, etc. Outside of that, he is not an expert. Mm-hmm. And so his perspective comes from all the aforementioned things. But I don't think we should be assuming that Jordan Peterson is going to have bell hooks level analysis on race and gender. That's not who he is. And I think it actually is his responsibility that if someone asked him questions that are in and around that range, that he should say, I don't know anything about that.
Facts.
I have no background in that. He probably has a high school level of understanding when it comes to race and gender. And so you see that because, I mean, if I'm going to be honest, I think he's super arrogant.
Yeah.
And I think the mistake is that people even really engage him and take serious his views in that realm, because he has no backing in that realm whatsoever. That's what I think about Jordan Peterson. That doesn't mean, I'm sorry, I'm rambling, but that doesn't necessarily mean, this is my opinion, not just about Jordan Peterson, about anybody, that doesn't mean that you can't get valuable information from someone that has skewed information in other realms. You know what I mean? But that requires some level of critical thinking, to not just blindly defend a person because they're quote unquote smart, which essentially means nothing. You know what I mean? That all of their opinions are valid just because, let's say, they have a PhD or they're a professor at a university.
Amen to all of that. I really appreciate you sharing that, man.
Yeah, no one's ever asked me that question. Certainly not in documented, but no one's ever asked me that.
Cool. And the very last thing I really want to just kind of icing on that is just to play a very human and humble and balanced perspective. Like, I mean, it's no secret. I've said, like, I use hip hop as my family. I never had a father traditionally. Broken family. So my heroes, my teachers were my MCs. My literally Socrates and Cardinal were like uncles to me. But like a dude like you, before I actually met you, I'm like, yo, like Kamau is like Nas, but lives on Esplanade. So like I always like,
Word.
it was like, yo, this is
because
a very
Virgos, is that why?
What?
Because we're both Virgos, is that why?
There's something there, man. Virgo vibe, yo.
Just like very wise men, and I got to a point. I used to put Nas on a pedestal, and I got to a point where I'm like, yo, he's just a human, whatever. He's made mistakes. He beat Khalees, whatever. I still love his lyrics, but I can separate him and not make him not think that he's perfect and infallible. And like to not to just say, hey, come out. What's your dark side? Take us to a dark place in your mind, because you've already spoken about depression, but I kind of wanted to just make it a little more lighter and say to yourself personally, what do you think is maybe your own most personal problematic habit, or your something that you want to work on personally for yourself, or something that you feel is like, oh, I feel a little negative about that. Like, just.
Oh man.
He says to make it light.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it'd be something small, like you bite your nails or something. It doesn't have to be like, oh, I secretly.
Yeah, no, I mean, if you ask me a question like that, I'm going to think about it seriously. So I think I had commented on Logic's timeline a little while, like I'm not sure when, a little while ago, about shadow work.
Yes. Yeah.
So I think shadow work is important, but I think you have to be ready to talk about it. You know what I mean? So I feel like the whole thing about me being like wise and all that kind of stuff, I think part of that was how people viewed me, but then part of that was my own construction. That because some of the people that I respected kind of played that role too, but I don't think that's ever a whole person, Right. I think for instance, I never talked about sex in my music. I talked about love a lot, but I never talked about sex. And I'm not saying people have to talk about sex, but it was something that I chose not to talk about, And I don't necessarily think that's healthy. I think the thing about shadow work is to go into yourself and to confront some of the dark sides of yourself, which often involves, things that are difficult to talk about. Yeah. But would I just say it out of the, just off the cuff on the internet? Probably not. Probably not. But yeah, I have those sides. Like, I think everybody has those sides and they're grappling with those things. I think I think when you're a person that moves through the world in a certain way, whether it's true or whether it's you concealing parts of yourself, I think that you can be arrogant. I think you can get arrogant if you start to believe the hype about yourself, or like what people say about you, or the construction that you may have played a part in that other people have helped to build. And I think there's never a good result to that, because fundamentally it's not true. So my interest in actualization has kind of led me to an interest in wholeness, like psychological and just human wholeness. And part of that has to be like your dark side, or grappling with your darkness. Like, I watch a ton of UFC now, and that surprises a lot of people. But I've actually thought a great deal about what it is about literally people punching each other in their face. And I think it's just, I think violence, if I'm going to be honest, I think violence is a part of me that I've always repressed in some way, because I viewed it to be negative by nature. But I also never considered myself to be a pacifist. And so I've been kind of grappling with why I'm pulled to that particular thing in a way that I have never actually been pulled to another sport. Like, everyone knows I'm not a guy that is particularly interested in sports. I don't watch football. I don't watch basketball. I don't watch baseball, nothing like that. Maybe Michael Jordan, because he was an artist. I watched Michael Jordan because he was an artist, but I didn't watch basketball, But for some reason, it's like I watch hours of UFC every week, And I think that kind of messes with people's heads. Not general people, because general people don't care about me, but people that know me are like, that doesn't really match with what we know of you. And I just say, yeah, it's the same thing as the Jordan Peterson question, to not just like defend Jordan Peterson outright, knowing that he is problematic in some ways and toxic in many ways. You know what I mean? But to actually be like, yes, I listen to Jordan Peterson, I watch UFC, and I'm, figuring all that stuff out, because half the time I don't even know what's going on, but I do notice it, and then I like watch it, like, it's interesting. You just got into like watching people punching each other in the face so much,
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. I just to throw in something that might help you is I don't watch much Joe Rogan, but I saw Joe Rogan quickly say once, he said that MMA and fighting is basically short-term, quick solution building, and it's just like the physical body is essentially, it's just saying something, like it's obviously a form of expression, but it's just on another level, in another realm of communication. So maybe you could be analyzing that, and at least, I mean, not to judge you either way. I don't know if you're like watching bum fights and like raw violence on the internet, but like at least MMA is consensual combat. It's just not, this is structured, organized.
Yeah. But it's incredibly damaging. It's like football. Like I watched something on CTE the other day. I can't remember what it stands for, but it's basically long-term brain injury and what it does to people. And it's bad. It's not good. Like, there's no way that you could really say that getting punched in the face numerous times is good for your brain. And there are a lot of people have been severely harmed by it, not just in the moment, but long term, and so, managing that. I'm also a person that, I watched a lot of Discovery Channel when I was a kid, like nature shows, lions and sharks and like all this kind of stuff. And so when people talk about like peace and what is natural, I don't know what that means. We're all on computers now in terms of what is natural or not natural. I think that's a foolish argument, but that's a whole other thing. violence is a part of nature. It's violence is a part of nature, and I don't necessarily think that it is good or helpful all the time, but it certainly is a part of us.
Right.
And I think anything that you deny comes out in ways that are potentially more toxic if you're not actually articulating them as a thing. There is violence in us, and how do we manage it? You know what I mean? So I'm still kind of in the middle of that. I don't have a solution for that.
Process, man. The process.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, working through it and sharing your truth and expressing where you are in the present. I mean, can life get any more clear and balanced than that? I mean, that's what all of our heroes and ancestors did. So, you know, we're all just fumbling along towards whatever paradise or damnation we're meant to reach. I'm good, man. I mean, I have other questions, but hell, man, maybe yeah. I think it's on you.
Just to close, you know, I'm just curious to, like, moving forward, like, is there like any like new music that we can expect from you coming out like this year, or any other projects or anything in the works that you can speak on? Or
I mean, I'm trying, man. I'm trying. Like, I did that Kickstarter that closed March 2020, and so I'm committed to doing a record, and I'm committing to putting out that single edition magazine. I've been working on those things, but especially the music. I've actually found it very difficult. I haven't made music in a long time. Okay. I don't feel like I'm the same person that I was 10 years ago, the last time I really put out a significant amount of music.
Right.
I feel, if I'm honest, I feel a great deal of pressure about it, especially because 250 people actually gave me money to be able to do it. But I did have to, I mean, you know, the pandemic is a whole other thing, but I did have to slow myself down a little bit and calm my mind to just be like, okay, give yourself the time to be able to make it. Was never a person that made things fast anyway. In the history of me making music, you've never heard of me putting out music like every single year. You know what I mean? I think we need time to like live, to absorb, if we're going to produce something at some point in time. But I'm balancing that time that it takes with also just the discipline to be able to make it happen in a reasonable amount of time. But I admit it's been a bit of a difficult process to like refine my production voice, to refine my voice as a writer, and to refine my voice as like a performer or an artist. And you know, I'm working on a couple of different projects right now that are all creative projects, and some of them overlap and they will see the light of day. But yeah, it has been a strangely, unexpectedly difficult process to say I'm doing another record and then to actually sit down and try to figure out how I want it to sound and what I want it to be.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Well, I'm not going to ask you about the title, even though I'm curious. But I'm not going to do none of that. Yeah.
Last time around, I had a title, and when I recorded the music, I had to change the title, and I changed it to One Day Soon.
Oh, what was the title before that?
The original title was The Hands and the Heart. I was reading this book called I was reading this book called Growth to Selfhood. And there was lines in there about the hands and the heart. So the heart being the intention and the hands being the action. You know, I've always had a thing with hands too, like the idea of creativity, opposable thumbs, building tools, etc., etc. Like it's creativity at its core as a symbol. And so before I started, I was like, I want to call this album The Hands and the Heart. But then I went through the process of making the record, and it didn't feel like that's what it was anymore.
Right.
And I changed the title of the record. So I kind of took note from that time and decided to not even think about a title until I had enough music that I could start to say, what is this about? You know?
Word. Well, I mean, just to let you know, humbly, with no expectations, I know how you feel about your own stuff and your high standards, but I'm sure that a lot of people out there are just be happy to get anything from you. The lowest of your standards, your scraps would certainly be musical gold to some people.
I think fundamentally, like, I wanted to do another record for me. I think fundamentally it's like the thing that drives me to do. So I like to operate on the edge of my ability. Right. Like, I don't like to operate in my comfort zone because I've already done that. If I wanted to make another One Day Soon, I would have made another One Day Soon 2 years after One Day Soon. Right. But there already is a One Day Soon, so we don't need another One Day Soon. I don't need another One Day Soon. Right. And I went off on a whole other tangent. I got 2 master's degrees and I traveled all over the place and whatever. And I came back and I was pretty silent. But then I started just thinking about music and studying songwriting and writing in general and the act structure and all these things that are just interesting to me as a student, like to learn how a story is created, to how to make a story in a sonic world, how to express an idea in a simple form, how to build a character from point A to point B. Like, I got very interested in that. And so when I started learning more about that, I was like, oh, if I do something else, it'll be better than before because I'm still figuring out how to do that, So once I enter into that space where I'm like, I'm pushing the edge of what my ability actually is, that's where I like to create the most. It's a very uncomfortable place to be in, if I'm going to be honest. But that's the only thing that really excites me, So,
word.
Yeah.
Well, to everything and everyone that pushes you into the comfort zone to create, thank you. And hopefully, maybe later on this year, we could have you back, another chat.
Absolutely.
I'm here. You guys know where to find me.
All right. For real.
Especially with your
where are you at, Kamau? So hopefully we'll be post-pandemic, out of lockdown hell, man.
On the other side.
Yeah, on the other side of this. And to Stephanie and Jane, everybody, all our guests that are watching, Sandy, Colleen, Righteous, Logic, Righteous wants a sweater. He wants a sweater. I gotta tell you, he
Righteous, man.
He called me today. He just wants a Stolen from Africa sweater. So, but
I get that, man. That forest green.
Yes. Ian, thank you so much for this. It was way better than any of us imagined.
Thanks for having me. I enjoyed the conversation.
No problem. And then thanks for the jewels and Logic. Any last thoughts? Any questions?
Man, I'm full, man. I mean, this was like super educational and just I just feel blessed for this. But this was a great reasoning session, reminiscing and just exploring different concepts, man. So I appreciate it, man. You definitely gave us some tangible examples of ways of being and some stuff that I'm going to take back for my own mental health and dealing with my mind during these times and stuff. So I appreciate your tangible examples, man. So salute, man. Salute.
But the last thing I'll drop is I saw you say once something beautiful and I just wish it for you. I think you said something like your dream was to have an artist lover, a place to create, and a small kitten or something come out. So maybe
I've been debating whether or not to get a cat. I just can't figure out where to put the litter box. I like the energy of cats because they're independent and they're kind of like misunderstood.
Hell yeah.
They definitely have their own energy, and I relate to that energy. So
yeah,
I don't remember that at all, but that sounds like me 100%.
So I remember you said that. And just one quick thing is you can train a cat to actually poop in the toilet like a human.
I've seen it. I've researched it. I've researched it. Believe me.
So maybe that's all right. May every one of your dreams and wishes come true, brother. Thank you very much for this.
Appreciate you guys.
And yo, Tristan's in the comments. Big up.
Yeah. Oh, what up?
Yes. Mark Valino, a lot of Toronto royalty in the house. So thank you all, everyone. And we're gonna do this again We're here every Tuesday, 7 p.m. But thank you, Kamau, for being part of Stolen from Africa and the Reminisce Show.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
We'll do it again. Everyone, stay up. One love.
See y'all next week.